Hello, and welcome to Making Sense Greet the Week. I am Mona Duncan, and today we're going to be talking about monkey see, monkey do. And not that it is, I love animals of all kinds and how but here, starting off, monkey see, monkey do. In the 1950s, there were some Japanese primatologists that conducted a study on Japanese monkeys. And they observed several changes in the group once they began working with them. One of the things that they did was they began to give the monkeys sweet potatoes in their diet, and it made some differences. Anyway, in 1958, a group of consciousness seemed to develop among the monkeys, as though they could talk with each other or something. And it was called the 100th monkey effect. And what this just meant was that the monkeys, it was like, well, what one did, maybe another one observed it and they'd go do the same thing. Like, monkey see, monkey do. And one of the things was there was a small monkey that they named IMO, emo, and it discovered that this monkey had these sweet potatoes that had been given to them. And the monkey would take the sweet potato down to the river, down to the creek, and would wash it before eating it. And within time, a whole bunch of them began to take their sweet potatoes down to the stream and wash it before eating it. And it became known as the 100th monkey effect, meaning that after a large enough group began to do basically the same thing, then it would become, it will be, I don't know. I mean, they didn't say this. Well, here's the 1958, from 1950, whenever they began doing this study with the monkeys, in 1958, a group consciousness seemed to develop among the monkeys. Once a critical number of monkeys had learned the behavior, it spread across the water to monkeys on nearby islands, even those physically separated and seemingly unable to communicate with each other. So it's not as though, it's kind of like it was a mystical thing that they were getting to the point of having new ideas that would be spreadable and would jump from this point to that point and would jump to otherwise things too. And I think that this mystical new ideas is in the airway, and we have perception that we see with our vision. And so at the very end of this Google search that I did on the 100 monkeys, says the next time you encounter a new idea, consider the possibility that it might be the 100th monkey effect in action. That we do always have things that come to us. And do you ever think, well, where did that come from? And so, in looking at that, the ability to make things better or worse, to think and to rethink. And when we have this new idea, you ever had an idea and you begin to think, well, do I want to keep on with this? Do I need to make it better? Or can I make it worse? Well, in working with the federal prisoners at the sanction center, and they were getting ready to be released back out into to making the transition back into society. And anyway, I found that I would ask them the question whenever they'd be sent to me to find out just why you were what you did. And then asking them, I say, is there anything you can do to make this situation worse? before we talked about fixing it or anything. It's what, could you have made it worse? And it's kind of a weird, insightful effect. It's from Glasser Institute of Reality Therapy and Choice Theory. If you can begin to look at, could I have done things worse? Well, the answer is pretty much a yes. But then also, although it's coming from a negative perspective, what can you do to make things worse? It still had a power of empowering those that had been in difficult situations. So then I asked again, it seemed as though they were in control. And when they were in control of themselves, they were back to being more amenable. And so I would ask, is there anything you can do to make the situation better? Whether it was then or whether it's now, whether it was then that you could have done and you're thinking now because you're learning to evaluate and to see, or if you were thinking then, or you realize now that maybe you can do something so that you will not be sent back to the enclosed incarceration. So reluctantly, most of them agreed that they could do better, that they could do worse, that they could do better. And so once their back was against the wall, they seemed to have the power to make things better or worse. So whenever we have those things that are not so good, how can we make what's bad to be a little better? Well, attitude is a biggie, a great biggie, the attitude that we have. And what does attitude constitute? It's the words we use. It's the tone of voice that we have. It's the sounds that we make, whether it's groans or moans or whatever. It has to do with our facial expression and our body language. It transmits the attitude as much as anything does. And then without a word being spoken, the individual that you are having a decent attitude with, there can be a shift. You can visibly see the shift from being rebellious to being more noticeable. And so once that shift is visible enough to affect the lowering of their defenses, you begin to get to the point where you can communicate and negotiate can be established. And then often, many, many times, privileges are changed, going back to the fact that you can't have a few privileges as opposed to the fact that, no, you're at the point of not having any new privileges and maybe even some rectifications. So the choices that we make are empowering. Yay or nay? Well, what about losing your keys? Sometimes it can be empowering. Choices are definitely the positive and negative. But anyway, when your keys are misplaced, oh no, I'm ready to go and I can't find my keys. Where are they? Where are they? Well, there's that no, how can I lose my keys? It's that kind of that response that we have. Well, whenever we're saying no to something that's we're denying, and we're in a state of denial, our vision is narrowed because our physiology is attached to everything we do. And whenever we're in that state of denial, our vision that we think we can see so good, it becomes narrowed. Our thinking is decreased and the stress rises. So as we can begin to look at those choices and, something that is needed, so that a seemingly illogical decision to choose to accept the fact that you lost your keys, that you can't find your keys, that you can't get in the car right now and go wherever you were wanting to go. When you accept the situation, the mind is free to remember. It activates the eyes to see, and it releases our creativity to solve the problem. And so things turn out much, much better whenever we can begin to be empowering over the choices we make instead of being hysterical. And then the choice of keeping a good attitude amid inconvenient situations that's going on, then, you can find out that you're going to have a good day regardless, even though some of those mishaps turned out to be an oh no. And so here's just a thought in choices having consequences and whether, how do we communicate and that kind of stuff. So just here, just a couple of thoughts, and I've been thinking about it, and you might want to think about it too. Is that the vendor that offers 6 flavors had people coming in and checking out, kind of in a new city and new uh, position. The vendor that offered 6 flavors sold to 30% of his visitors, whereas the vendor that offered 24 flavors sold to only 3% of his visitors. So, what does that tell us? That more is better, or more is confusing, more is disappointing? So, and looking at the animals and looking at we as human beings and people, and sometimes when we get frustrated and don't know how to handle the new ideas or don't know how to handle the situations we've been in, uh, a prayer by Reinhold Niebuhr, and it goes hand in hand with with most anything in life whenever we get frustrated. And so he says, God, grant me the serenity to accept those things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, not trying to stick everything in one day, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, and accepting hardship as a pathway to peace. Accepting hardship, accepting difficulties, accepting those tense moments as a pathway to peace. And so, in looking at, there's 3 basic things that is in this poem. Grant. What does it mean to grant? It means to permit, to allow, to award, to be gifted, to receive the gift of. Grant me the serenity. What is serenity? What am I being granted? Peace, and poise, composure, calm. And then grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, to accept. What does it mean to accept? It means to receive, to admit, to agree, to consent to. And then the courage to change the things I cannot change, courage to find the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I mean, that's a separate little section that we can just think about. And then living one day at a time, which is all we can do anyway. As a matter of fact, this moment is the only moment that's at our disposal because time just keeps on passing. Living one day at a time, enjoying this 1 minute at a time. What am I learning from this? How can I enjoy it? And accepting the hardship as a pathway to peace. So I think this may have been a little it seems to me like it didn't all fit, and yet at the same time I couldn't not put all this stuff in. So those were the thoughts on my mind today, and I thank you for being here. And I'm going to close the recording and eventually, and we'll chat with each other. So many blessings.